Greetings, everyone. This is Ramble Collector here, back with our next book review for Halloween 2023. For this, we will not be diving into anything modern or new. Instead, we will be traveling back to 1897, where we shall talk about the classic Gothic horror novel, Bram Stoker's Dracula. I cannot lie to you guys, this has been one novel that I've wanted to read and review for a while now, especially after reading Joseph Sheridan La Fanu's Carmilla, which in fact served as the main inspiration for Dracula. Now with that being said, let's get on with the review, shall we? So first of all, Dracula definitely earns its title as a classic horror novel, taking its time to build up the power and terror of Dracula as a monster, showcasing his unique abilities and character. Not to mention, the writing style itself was very unique, being expressed through various points of view using letters, diary entries, journals, and even newspaper clippings and telegrams. And it also really helps to further establish some unique vampire abilities, such as the abilities to turn into other forms, conjure mist, as well as mind control. And I like how here, even though vampires nowadays are very well established, back then, they were still something very fresh and new, despite being used a lot in folk tales and things like that, being passed down in various stories. I feel like the main published works that really brought vampires into the limelight were, of course, Carmilla, and then later, Dracula. So Dracula, of course, is a very big cult classic, being featured in things such as World of Darkness, or, of course, the ever so well-known manga Hellsing, which has its roots based in Bram Stoker's novel. And even though Bram Stoker has written many books, Dracula is, of course, his most well-known. However, I will say one of my main things with this novel is that it really dragged itself on. At 502 pages, I will not kid you guys and say that this book can be an absolute slogfest at times. But the characters themselves are all very interesting. When you have Jonathan Harker, the first one who visits the Count, and sees him in a much elderly, worn-out state with long white hair, long mustachio, all that stuff. Whereas later on in the book, it shows that he is visibly de-aged just by consuming more blood. So he goes from an older gentleman with long white hair to the short cropped hair that we see here in our main image. Not to mention we also see, of course, the title of the character of Abraham Van Helsing himself, as well as Mina Harker, Jonathan Harker's wife, and one who was almost turned into a vampire, as well as Quincy Morris, and so many others. Okay, I'm going to start this off right now. There were so many characters throughout this that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I really loved the approach of it, of them writing all of this story down and having it progress through journal entries, or diaries, or even things such as, well, newspaper clippings for one. Now that one really caught me off guard, especially when they were talking about a ghost ship, the Demeter, which apparently now has a movie adaptation, The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which I will be definitely checking out after this. But more than that, though, I like how Dracula nowadays is such a staple in popular culture. Whether it's them redoing the same movie over and over again, or just establishing him in other series, but the fact remains, Dracula has become such a cult classic, and it's because of this book. Which, again, if you are not prepared for a longer, much more slow burn type of book, where it shows the characters trying to figure out just what a vampire is, the various mysteries surrounding it, why one of the main characters, Lucy Westenra, keeps losing blood so rapidly, only to then die and come back as one, as a vampire. Regardless, though, because of the slow burn, it can take a while. But let's move on to random thoughts, shall we? So, if you were to ask me my personal favorite characters out of this book with random thoughts, I would have to say it's definitely Jonathan and Mina Harker themselves, as well as Van Helsing himself. Now, the main reason for Jonathan and Mina Harker is because those two are such a power couple for each other, especially concerning the times here. Because Jonathan not only has to figure out the fact that the Count is not whom he sees, and literally has to escape the castle only to wind up absolutely insane because of it. But later on, when Mina is threatened by Dracula, he goes to full lengths to hunt this monster down to exterminate him for the threat that he poses upon his wife. And I gotta say, I like how Mina here isn't as much of a background character, because she willingly offers a lot of good information. Like, she's able to put it all together, help figure out that what's going on, that Dracula is currently invading London, Lucy had died because of it, and literally after that, because she is turning and has a mental link with the Count, she's able to provide information upon his whereabouts and where he is. And Jonathan even made a silent vow that if they are unable to kill Dracula, or if they are, but Mina stays a vampire, he will himself have her convert him into one, so that way she does not have to face the night alone. That is couple goals right there. I am not even kidding. As for Van Helsing, what can I say? The guy's a full-blown eccentric who, straight up, is so full of goofiness but also honor, and the fact that he knows everything about what's going on with the vampires, like he assumes he knows what it is, with things such as the garlic and crucifixes, and he just puts it all together himself, up along with Mina, to figure out what exactly is going on. He is constantly praising her, saying how she is such a beautiful woman, and how she has, as he quotes, man's brain, meaning that she's far more intelligent than most characters, and I like that. I like how he respects Mina and values her opinion. Now, honestly, one of the randomest things ever is the garlic for me. I don't know why that is such a common vampire weakness, and yet it had me always thinking about it, like, with garlic itself, is it because vampires themselves feast upon blood and garlic itself is such a natural blood thinner, that if a vampire were to consume it in that time period, would it dilute all the blood that they have consumed? Or would it just thin out their blood banks? I'm genuinely curious as to how garlic itself, even the smell of it, is so toxic to vampires. I am genuinely curious to learn that. Not to mention, after this, I'm actually very curious to read more older vampire works, just to see how things have changed from then to now. Because vampires now are so commonplace, and they know all their abilities, but of course they all harken back to Dracula the novel. And another thing, the crucifix. Like, I love how they reference it as this like demonic thing, and the fact that Dracula just keeps getting staved off by this thing was genuinely hilarious to me. The fact that he's scared of the cross and all that. But I think the funniest thing for me is that he still has a scar on his forehead, and it took me a while to realize that essentially Jonathan whacked Dracula in the head with a shovel of all things. I'm kind of surprised that Dracula didn't make it a personal thing to chase after Jonathan, just for smacking him across the head and leaving a nasty red scar across his forehead. I'm sorry, I'm just realizing that, and quite frankly, it is hilarious. I don't know why. But I will say again, I liked how, again, it was a slow burn up to page 250. Then as we were going past the halfway point, it builds up in intensity, to the point that you want to keep going. But I will say this one was definitely a bit of a slog. This one took me at least 2 weeks to finish, and I'm so glad I finally got it done. But with that being said, let's move on to the final score. I think I've talked long enough. So, overall, sorry, I feel comfortable putting Dracula at a solid 7 out of 10. Just because it is an older novel, it is ranked much higher for me. However, because it was much more of a slow burn, it really took me a lot of time to kind of devote to this novel, just because of the slower pace. Like, after the second half, it really picked up for me, but again, the slower pacing of it kind of detracts from it a little bit. Like, by the end, I was starting to feel more relief than excitement at finishing this novel. However, that does not deter from the fact that this is a major classic book and a major vampire work that I would recommend everyone reads at least once. And I gotta say, it was genuinely fun to finally get the chance to talk about this piece, as well as Carmilla, which, if you're curious, I've left a link in the description down below if you want to check out my review of Carmilla. But If you enjoyed this review, thank you so much for listening. And I can tell you right now, the next book I've got planned is going to be another classic, or you might see a few more modern stuff, but you'll just have to wait and see. However, if you are curious to see some of the other books that I've covered, I will leave a link to the Book Rambles playlist that I have on this channel at the end of this video, or if you want to see some of the other Halloween reviews that I've done in the past, I will leave a link to that playlist here at the end of the video as well. And if you guys liked what I do here, please feel free to leave a like, comment your thoughts down below, or subscribe if you're interested in future content. Once again, thank you so much for listening to this crazy man's ramblings. I hope you're having a happy Halloween or a good spooky season. And once again, thank you all for tuning in. This is Rambling Collector, signing off. Have a great day, fellow readers.